which language? Assembly language. Microprocessor is what? A chip actually. But what is this chip using is, here the chip is using which language? Assembly language. And how about number three? Number three is something like what? A low level language, whereby it is used by whom? It is used by something like what? The operating system. Okay. So example, just I am taking something like a calculator. In every computer, just you are finding some application, something like what? Calculator. Okay, just what is this calculator? Yeah, for example, just I'm building what? A calculator, whereby just we are taking two numbers. Number one is what? 10, and I'm taking what? Number two is what? 20. Clear? So I want to build a program just whereby we are taking what? Two numbers, number one and number two. Okay, so my requirement is, just we want to perform what? We want to perform something like what? Addition. Addition of what? Simple. Addition of something like number one and number two. Clear? So what is number one? As I have told you, it is a 10. Okay, how about number two? It is something like what? 20. Okay, and what is the operation we want to perform? Addition. Addition of what? Number one and number two. So what a developer can do is simple. He can create what? A program. Okay, so whereby in this program, just we are taking what? Two numbers, number one and number two. But what is the operation we want to perform? The operation we want to perform is what? Addition. So I am telling that just I am performing what? Number one plus number two. Able to follow? So I'd be writing my program just whereby number one will be 10 and number two will be what? 20. And just I am taking what? I am taking something like okay, addition is what? Addition is something like number one plus number two. Yes or no? So when coming to my program, just here we are taking number one and number two. And apart from this, just on adding of number one, number two, we are storing that where okay in addition. So within a program, what are these called as? These are called as what? Variables. For example, I am talking about number one. Similar way, I am talking about number two. And similar way, just I am talking about what? Addition. In program, these are called as what? These are called as something like what? Variables. Okay. So what is a variable? Variable can be used for storing what? For storing some data. It is something like in a phone, what we can do? We can store some contact numbers. Clear? Similar way, when we are writing a program. So who is writing a program? A program is written by whom? By some developers. Sometimes these are also called as what? Programmers. Clear? Okay. So what the programmer is doing is simple. He want to create what? An application. The requirement is addition of what? Two numbers, number one and number two. So in the program, what are these numbers called as? Simple. These are called as what? Variables. I hope that's clear. Okay. And apart from this, what is the operation we want to perform? The operation we want to perform is something like number one plus number two. In other term, it is referred as what? Addition. So we are writing all this in which language? We are writing all this in something like what? High level language. Clear? So first our program is always written where? First our program is always written in something like a high level language. Is that clear? Hello? Hello? Is it audible? Okay. So like suppose like since you are completely beginner, first you should know what is a program, etc. So when we talk about a program, what a program contains? Simple. A program contains what? Some variables. For example, here we can find three variables, not two. Number one is first variable. Number two is second variable, and addition is also what? The third variable. These are called as what? Variables. I can use a variable for what? For storing some information. For example, this is something like what? The first variable. Here, what is the first variable? Simple. I can tell that number one is what? The first variable. So what data I'm storing? I'm storing the data of what? 10. Similar way, just we are finding what? We are finding something like a second variable. It is what? Number 2. So what data we are writing? We are storing. It is something like the value of what? 20. Okay. But what operation we are performing? Already I told that just we are performing what? Addition. Okay. As you are familiar, addition means we are adding what? Some numbers. Here the numbers are what? Number 1 plus number 2. Okay. So at the end point, just what we find, we are finding what all these were in the program. But what is your programming containing? In a program, just we can find variables. When coming to number 2, just we can find what? Some operations. For example, as already I told you here, the program contains what? 3 variables. Number 1, number 2, and addition. And similar way, just we are finding what? How many operations? Only one operation. That is what? That is something like what? Addition. Clear? So at the beginner level, just what you can understand is a program contains what? Variables and operations. For example, here just as already I told you, here we are having 3 variables, number 1, number 2, and what? Addition. Addition is for what? Addition is for storing some result. I can take any name for a variable. It is not that I have to take only addition. I can take also what? X equal to number 1 plus number 2. It is based on what? It is based on your requirement. Clear? Okay, apart from variables, just what we are doing is we are performing what? We are performing some computations. What is that? We are performing what? We are performing some computations. Computations are also called as what? Operations. But at the end point, who is performing these computations? It is done by whom? By your computer. Computer means something like what? Your operating system. At the top level, just okay, program is written by whom? Developer. But at the end point, this program is used by whom? At the end point, this program should be used by the operating system. Is that clear? At the end point. So, like what I mean to say is, even you are writing your program in high level language. For example, you are telling what? You are telling that number 1 is 10, you are telling that number 2 is 20, and so forth. We are taking all this where we are taking all this in high level language. But at the second point, at the second phase, just we have to give this program to whom? To the processor. Able to follow? So what is happening is, whatever the program we are writing in high level, it is converted into which language? Assembly language. Suppose I am giving this program to processor. Okay, suppose I am giving this program to processor. What is processor doing is here the processor is using what? Simple. Here the processor is using which language? Here the processor is using something like the assembly language. Assembly language means not that much. It is a bit complex. A bit complex means it may not be easy for the programmers or the developers. Clear? So what we can observe is we can observe that the processor, it may be Intel processors. We have so many processors available where in the market, like Intel processor, Celeron processor, etc. But what is processor using? I can tell that processor is using what? Which language? Assembly language. Like previously we are talking about what? Variables, right? We can find variables where we can find variables in something like what? A high level language. Suppose you are writing a program where in HTML, or you are writing a program in C language or Java language. Just already I told that these are what? High level language. Clear? So in high level language, if we want to store some information, we can find what? Variables. But when coming to assembly language, just what we can find is we can find what? Registers. Registers are what? Registers are available where in assembly language. Clear? So, okay, at second level, you are giving your program to whom? At the second level, you may be giving your program to the processor. Processor is very important actually. Clear? But what is processor doing? Is processor using high level language? No. Processor is using what? Assembly language. Okay. In high level language, I told that we are having what? Variables. For example, here, already I told that we are having 3 variables, number 1, number 2, and addition, right? But how about assembly language? In the case of assembly language, just we can find what? Registers. So what is processor doing is simple. it is moving number one to what? It is moving number one to something like register 1. What is REG? Here REG stands for what? Register. Similar way, it is taking number 2 to what? It is taking number 2 to, okay, REG2. So what is moving number 2 register 1? For example, what is number 1 containing 10? So what is processor doing is, the processor is moving the 10 value to whom? Register 1. Similar way, what is processor doing is, it is moving number 2. Number 2 means what? As just we can observe, number 2 is what? 20, right? It is moving this 20 value where simple, it is moving this 20 value to register 2. Then how about the operation? Okay, if you want to perform the operation, this processor is taking add number 1 comma number 2. Clear? So now the same program we are writing where in high level language, it is getting converted to what? It is getting converted to something like what? Assembly language. So this program is in which language? This program is converted into what? Assembly language. Is that clear? You have any questions? Okay, yeah. So, and what is the third level? The third level is, we are giving the same program to whom? We are giving the same program to something like what? Operating system. Clear? Okay, yeah. So when we talk about the operating system, okay, when we talk about the operating system, okay, like just we can find Windows, we can find what? Unix, we can find what? Mac, we can find what? Android. Even Android is what? An operating system. But we are using that where in something like mobile phones, we can find what? iOS, etc. We find so many operating system. But what is your operating system doing? Is it using assembly language? No. Is it using something like high level language? No. Operating system, again I'm telling you, is it is using what language? It is using something like the low level language. It is also referred as what? It is also referred as something like what? A machine language. Which language? Machine language. What is your computer doing? Computer means what? Your machine actually. What is computer doing? Computer is always using what language? Low level language or machine language. Clear? So like, okay, like here what we find is, here we find the concept of what? Here we find something like the concept of what? The concept of bits. Bit means you can find 0 and you can find what? 1. Your operating system is always using bits. Bits means zeros and ones. So what is this 0 and what is this 1? For example, I have taken what in my program? I have taken number 1 is what? Something like what? 10 something. For the time being, to make it simple, instead of taking 10, we'll take 4 and we'll take 2. Clear? So let's not take 10 and 20, not that much data. Let's take number 1 is 4 and I'll take what? Number 2 as what? Something like 2, something like this. Clear? Let's make it simple. So in, okay, like in, when coming to low level language, this data is converted into something like which format? This data is converted into something like what? Binary format. Binary format means it is a format understood by whom? It is a format understood by your operating system. Example, in my machine just we have Windows. Yes. What is Windows telling? Windows is telling what? I can understand only binary format. In high level language, we are giving this in which format? Decimal format. For example, in childhood, we are converting decimal numbers into what? Binary numbers, right? Binary numbers to decimal numbers, etc. I hope you have done that in school days, right? Conversion of numbers from octal to decimal, decimal to hexadecimal, etc. Right? So in your program, we are taking all these numbers in which format? Decimal format. For example, number 1 is for, I am telling what number 1 is for. It is in which format? Decimal format. But at the end point, you are giving this decimal numbers to whom? Operating system. But what is operating system doing? Operating system is telling what? I can understand only binary format. Clear? The same number 1 is converted into which format? Binary format, like 0000 100, something like this. I hope it's clear, right? So this number is converted into which format? Binary format. Binary format means only zeros and one. That's all. Clear? Okay. Then how about number two? As I told you, just we are taking what? Number two is what? Two. Just this is also converted to what? This is also converted to something like what? Binary format. Something like we have 0 0 0 0 0 0 1 0. Okay. At the end point, okay, just what we find is at the end point we can find something like this one, and okay, like just we can find what? We can find this one. But what is happening here? Just we are having what? The concept of what? Addition. Clear? Plus. So just you can understand that. See here how operating system is performing the same calculation. 0 0 makes what? 0 0 makes 0. That's all. When we talk about 0 1, 0 1 makes what? 1. 1 0 makes what? 1. The result is again okay, like stored in which format? Something like what? Decimal format. And followed by what? Followed by we are having what? All zeros. I hope this is clear. So this is completely for what? Beginners. What beginners have to understand is beginners have to understand that okay, like see how the result is. So 0 0 makes what? 0. Clear? Okay, and 0 1 makes what? 1. Just using 1 0 makes what? 1. Again 0 0 makes what? 0. So this is applicable for what? All these digits. So at the end point, just we are getting what? 110. Suppose this is in which format? Again, I'm telling this is something like what? Binary format. What format? Binary format. So this is storing which value? This is storing the value of what? 6. Clear? In my program, I can find what? 6. But okay, what is the operating system doing? It is storing the same value in which format? Binary format. Is this clear? So for the beginner, this is about what? This is about something like the types of languages used by whom. This is about the types of languages that is used by your computer. Clear? So we find high level language. This is the first language like HTML. I can tell that HTML is also a high level language because it is used by whom? By the developer. Okay. But suppose when we come to system point of view or computer point of view, in computer just we can find what? Processor. Yes, processor is using what language? Assembly language. So example, again just I am getting into assembly language. When coming to assembly language, we find what? Registers. For example, I want to move a value of number one. I want to store a value for number one. Here we are taking what? Registers. Like we can find something like reg1. Similar way, just we are finding what? Reg2. Here, what is reg1 and what is reg2? These are what? Registers. That's all. So in high level language, we are using plus operator, number one plus number two. But here we are taking what? Add. Clear? Okay. This is all coming under what? This is all coming under which language? Assembly language. Okay. But at the low level means at the end point, we have to convert the same program into what? We are converting the same program into which format? Binary format. We means not programmer. It is automatically done by whom? By your operating system. Okay. So for the beginners, you should know that like we have three types of languages: high level language, assembly language, and what? Low level language. Okay. Yeah. So these are about the types of languages. Yeah. Now let us see actually like the definition of a program. First, we should know what is a program. For example, in HTML, you are writing what? A program. Okay. Suppose we are having JavaScript. In a JavaScript also we are writing what? A program. But first we should know what is a program. Definition of program. Program is defined as something like a set of instructions. What is that? Program is defined as what? Some set of instructions. Instruction means some commands. What do you mean by instructions? Here instructions means something like what? Commands. So for whom we are giving these commands? We are giving these commands to whom? To the computer. What is that? To the computer. Example, previously just we have written what? Previously we have written something like number 1 plus number 2. Okay. What is that? Just we have taken what? Number 1 plus number 2. What is this number 1 plus number 2? Symbol. It is something like what? An instruction. What is that? It's an instruction. Okay. So we are giving this instruction to whom? To the computer. In other terms, what we are telling is we are telling the computer for what? In other terms, we are telling the computer to perform what? To perform some operation. Is that clear? We are telling the computer to perform what? Some operation. As I have told you, this is also called as what? This is also called as a computation. Able to follow? What is the definition of computer? Computer can perform what? Some computations. Clear? We know that. What is the definition of a computer? We know that a computer can perform what? Computations. But how it is performing this computation? Simple. We are giving what? Some set of instructions. Able to follow? We are giving what? Simple. We are giving something like what? Some set of instructions. We are giving what? Simple. We are giving something like what? Some set of instructions. What is a computer capable of? We know that computer is capable of performing somewhat computations. Okay, but how it is performing these computations? What a programmer should do is simple. A programmer has to give what? Some set of instructions. For example, here I am having one instructions like number 1 plus number 2. Is that clear? Okay, so what is a program? Program is defined as some set of instructions. But who is running these instructions? At that point, these instructions are run by whom? By your computer. Is that clear? Okay, yeah. So important thing is, what is a program? Program is defined as what? Some set of instructions. For example, here we find one instruction like number 1 plus number 2. Do you find any more instructions? Yes, we find some more instructions like you are taking what? Number 1 is 10. When we talk about number 1 is 10, it's also what? An instruction. What instruction you are giving? You are giving the instruction to whom? To whom? To the computer, that you are taking what? A variable, and whereby the value of the variable is what? 10. Similar way, we have one more instruction like number 2 is what? Something like what? 20 something. I'm modifying. Otherwise we can take same 4, just we can take what? 2. These are also what? Instructions. Okay, previously I told that number 1 and number 2 is what? An instruction. We are telling what? We are giving this instruction to whom? To the computer. And what is the computer doing? We know that the computer is performing what? A computation. Clear? Okay. Is do have only one instruction? No. We have some more instructions like number 1 is 4. Similar way, we have one more instruction now. Number 2 is what? 2. So what we are doing? We are telling the computer that we are taking what? How many variables? 2 variables. The first variable is what? Number 1. The second variable is what? Something like what? Number 2. Is that clear? Okay. And below this we find what? The third instruction like addition is what? Addition is what? Number 1 plus number 2. I hope that's clear. Okay. So where we are storing all these instructions, I am telling that I am having some set of instructions like this is like instruction 1. This is like instruction 2. And this is something like what? Instruction 3. We had to store all these instructions. Very simple. We had to store all these instructions within a program. In the reverse way, I can tell that program is what? Some set of instructions. Okay. So who is writing this set of instructions? This set of instructions. What is that symbol? This set of instructions are written by whom? By programmers. These are called as what? Programmers. Sometimes they are called developers or coders. Coders means who is writing what some code. Code means a program, something like this. For example, we want to paint a wall. We are taking the help of what painter. Yes or no? Suppose we want to repair our bike. We are taking what the help of what mechanic. Clear? Similar way, like we want to write what some set of instructions. Instructions means we want to write a program. We are taking the help of home programmer. Terminology. Programmer is also termed as what developer or what coder. Coder means who is writing what some code. Okay, clear? Yeah. So, but like the program format is what completely different. The program format is what completely different. I mean to say, in C language, the program is written in one type of format. In C++, it is written in where in some other type of format. In Java also it is written where in some other format type of what format. I hope that's clear. Okay, yeah. So for example, I want to write this program where in C language. Okay. So C is following what? C is following something like a procedure oriented programming. C uses what? Otherwise, I can tell that in simple, C uses something like what? C uses something like what? Procedures. C uses what? Procedures. But when coming to C++ or when coming to Java, it is using what? It is using some concepts. These are called something like object oriented concepts. What are these? These are called as what? These are called as something like what? Object oriented concepts. In shortcut, these are called the OOPS concepts. What concepts? These are called as what? These are called as something like what? The OOPS concepts. Clear? Suppose we want to construct two buildings, the architecture may be different. For example, I want to construct two buildings, building one, and the other one is what? The other one is what? Building two. But the architecture may be different. Building one is taking what? Building one is taking its own architecture. The architecture means the style. Yes or no? Building two is taking what? Building two is taking another type of architecture. What is that? Building two is taking what? Building two is taking something like another type of architecture. Architecture means the look and feel. Yes or no? How it is, how it is built. I hope you can understand. Every building is having what? Every building is having its own architecture. Every building is having what? Simple. Just we can understand that every building is having its own architecture. Architecture means the design style. Here architecture means, I mean to say, the design style. Design style means how you are constructing your building. Clear? Okay, similar way, the design style may like change from one program to other program. We know that C is what? A language. Yes. Okay, how we are designing a program in C language is completely different from C++ and Java. As I told you, in C language we are using what? Procedures. But when coming to C++ or when coming to Java, are we using procedures? We are using what? Object oriented concepts. Sometimes these are also called as what? Sometimes these are also called as OOPS concepts. It's like I want to construct two buildings, but the architecture may differ. I am telling what? Building one is having its own architecture. When coming to building two is taking what? Another type of architecture. Here architecture means the style, or it's also called as what? It is called as the paradigm. Paradigm means the format. Paradigm, it's called as what? Paradigm. Some words we are using. Paradigm. Paradigm means the style. Okay, like building one may be having its own style, building two is having what? Its own style. But how we are having a different style? Because the architectures are what? Differing. As I told, building one is having its own architecture, and building two is also what? Having what? Its own architecture. Similar way, when we talk about a language, a language is having what? Its own paradigm. A language is having what? A language is having, language means a programming language. I mean to say, a programming language is having what? Is having its own paradigm. What's that? It is having what its own paradigm. Paradigm means its style. Sometimes it's also referred as what? Sometimes it is also referred as a programming style. Clear? Like I told that the style of building one is differing from what building two. Why? Because the